here we go. All right, so here we are. This is our first project. This is a 4-part chorale and finale. Basically, we're going to learn how to do a piano part, but 4-part chorale. So like you would read like one of Bach's chorales. This is due next week, so stuff's due before the start of class. You'll do the file in Finale, but you'll make a PDF of the score and also submit a WAV file. So you'll get to work with MIDI realizations right away. So when you open up Finale, at first, it'll actually take you to this thing called the setup wizard. So this is going to open up right away. You'll see it when you do it. And we're going to click create new ensemble. Just leave it on the maestro style. You can see, let's do a landscape. It's going to fit this chorale size better. So we're going to do score page landscape. Part page size doesn't matter because we're not doing parts. Click next. And we're going to work with a grand staff. So you click on, this is basically an instrument that we're adding. We're going to click add. And I'm going to call this 4-part chorale. The composer is J.S. Bach. And that's all we need for that. Then in the score settings, we set up time signature. This has common time. It's the key of G. Everybody know your key signatures? Does that make perfect sense? And this one you'll notice actually has a pickup measure in the score. So I'm gonna and a tempo marking. So I'm gonna specify tempo marking and specify pickup measure. This tempo marking has Gelobet seist du, Jesu Christ, got some German. So we can work on some foreign language. Not a bad practice, because someday you're going to go to a gig and there's going to be somebody that only speaks German and you'll be like, yeah, I wrote a couple German words once. Okay, so pickup measure is a quarter note beat. So we'll specify that and click finish. So this markings here in bold red are some of the important things, commands, things I want you to do. You'll notice it's untitled. The funny thing about Finale is when it makes your first score, it does not save it. So always, always, always save, because this untitled is just hanging out in the middle of nowhere. Don't work like 2 hours on untitled and have your computer crash. So save as, and always save in a digital environment, always save something descriptive and hierarchical. Like don't call it untitled, don't call it chorale, because when you go to submit it, I may not know whose it is. So something like MUS 172, Project 1, Murray, that's an example. And I'm gonna do, I have my folder on the desktop. You see this little pull down here? This gives you on Mac more options if you want to be able to find your exact folder. So MUS 172, Project 1, Great. There we have it. The second thing I want you to do, and you only have to do this the first time that you make your first thing in Finale, and then it'll save it forever. There's an auto save feature, which will save you from losing your work. So you go to File or Finale Preferences, and then Save, and you need to auto save every 1 minute. Yay, because guaranteed Finale will crash at some point, and I don't want you to lose your work. It creates backups every 1 minute automatically if you change that. So change that, and then you won't have to for the rest of the semester. All right, so this palette over here, everyone see this palette on the left? This is the tools palette in Finale. And the things that I reference by number on the directions have to do with these different tools. So this arrow one is the editing tool, basically. So this is kind of the main hub. It allows you, like, you can point at stuff, and like, I don't want this to say subtitle, so I'm going to just point at that and click delete. This allows you to kind of do stuff. You can also grab your markings and move them around. So that's the main tool. It's called selection tool. We're going to change the staff name. Do you notice how it says 51? And it's not so important that it's called 51, but I want you practice at knowing how things are labeled in Finale. Very important when you start having scores with multiple instruments. You don't, just type it in here. You want it attached to the staff. So no matter where it shows up in your document, everything will be labeled right. So this happens if we go up to the top menu under Window, Score Manager. And you'll see this is where all of the different instruments are listed. We'll be using Score Manager a lot. But click on the score and then full name. This is where you can name it. We're just going to name it 51. And voila, 51. Yay. All right, so to enter notes, there's a couple of different ways to do it in Finale, but we're going to start with this tool called Speedy Entry Tool. And it's the note that looks like it's moving, like, woo, it's like running Speedy Entry. So I'm going to click on that, and Speedy, you'll see I can click in different measures. And this, I'm telling Speedy where I want to enter notes. So of course we want to enter from the beginning. And so I click in the first measure, and Speedy is great because it is the tool that can coordinate entering notes using the keyboard, using the piano. It's actually, I said it wrong. We're going to call this the piano, and we're going to call this thing the keyboard. Does that make sense? This is a keyboard. This is a piano. Otherwise, the word keyboard can be used for either, right? And get all goofed up. So piano, keyboard. So to get it to communicate with it, we have to first go up to Speedy and make sure use MIDI device for input is checked. So this piano becomes a MIDI controller with Finale. To get it to use rhythms, we're going to turn on the caps lock. And can I zoom in? I'm going to zoom in a lot here. You notice when I have the caps locks on and then I push a number, does everyone see how it changes the number? See the little number in the bottom? Everyone see that? You see on your screen? So this coordinates to different rhythms. So if you look at the directions over here on the right, 1 is a 64th, 2 is a 32nd, 16th note, 4 is an 8th note, 5 is a quarter, and a quarter note is what we need. So I have it on quarter note, and
why I don't see the number on the program for mine.
Did you check use MIDI input for device? Yeah, and then caps lock?
Caps lock is also turned on.
I'll have to check it out. Then, yay, you push. And the first two measures, or measure and a half, are all quarter notes. So I just went to town. I entered these notes in the top part of the chorale. And when I get to the half note, I change it to number 6, and it changes the rhythm. If I keep going 8th notes, we'll just do that much. So that's how you start the entry for using Speedy. Important point about layers. Do you all see how this is actually, since it's a 4-part chorale, it basically has soprano, alto, tenor, bass. And the stems are neatly coordinated so that the alto part stems go down Soprano part stems go up, tenor part stems up, bass part stems down, right? And I want you to use what we call layers, because the layers in finale are smart. They know that if you're doing a different layer, then they will change the stems for you. So this is important. I want you to use layers 1 and 2 for soprano alto, but you also use layers 1 and 2 for tenor and bass. Don't use 3 and 4 because they have different properties. So to shift layers, it's actually really easy to change layers. You go to where you want to enter and you just push the down arrow in shift down, changes the layer. So now I'm going to go back and now I'm going to enter the alto part. So if you're in the measure, shift up or shift down. And do you notice in the bottom left, you want to see this bottom left here, where it says layer 1, you can see what layer you're on. It changes layer 1, layer 2.
How do you get that box to show up in that number?
This little box,
Yeah, how do you get that
Yeah.
box to show up?
It should work with the caps locks on.
It's on now.
And then you push a number and it doesn't do anything.
No.
And under Speedy, you have used MIDI device for input. So I might need to come over and did it work?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to keep going for the sake of the video. So if you want to navigate through finale, you can use the back and forth arrows to get to different places. And this is important because later you might want to be like, oh, dang, I need a sharp on this note. And here's some of the shortcuts that you can use going through. So like if I go to this A and I want to delete it, just click delete. And now I'm going to bring it back. If you want to, that's not exactly what I wanted. If you need, for some reason, to flip a stem, letter L flips the stem. If you need to tie a note, equal signs does the tie. If you need to make a note a natural, N makes it a natural. The backslash breaks the beam. There is a place where you'll need to break a beam. So if I push backslash on the second note of a group, it'll break the beam. Plus and minus can raise or lower a note if you need to just make an accidental quickly. Number 9, if you push 9 over a note, it changes the N harmonically. So if you need a G flat instead of an F sharp. And shift 8 forces to show an accidental. There is one place where you need to force show, it's called a courtesy accidental. Shift 8. So F sharp is in the key signature on this alto note. So it's not showing it, but let's say if I wanted it to, I do shift 8. So those are just some quick things. Those are some scoring things that you'll want that are handy for Speedy as you go through. All right, let's keep going. So the selection tool, so the arrow thing we were back on, if you need to delete measures, you can click, where you want to start. And if you want to delete a whole group, you have to go to the bottom right of the group. So I'm going to hold shift and click. Let me show that again. So if I want to delete these 4 measures, I start at the top, hold shift, bottom right to the bottom right of the measure, and it'll select that group and I can click delete. It didn't really show much because it was all blank. Let me show it with these. If I don't want these measures anymore, delete.
You can also box, can't you?
You can drag a box. Will work too. I usually try to avoid it because once you start scoring a lot, your hand's going to get tired. So I try to not do that, but you can do that. Also, it can get a little sloppy. Do you see how it did half a measure here? You can also, if you want to delete one measure, double click and it'll do the whole measure. If you want to delete the contents of a measure, you select the material and right click, clear all items. That's how, if you don't want to delete the measure, but you want to delete the notes, can write. And now that we all have right click, that's how you can do that. To move measures around, there's two different ways. You can work with what's called fitting measures. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 measures in the first system. So I'm going to select 6 measures, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and hold down the shift to select those measures. And the shortcut I have listed here is Command-Shift-M. Command-Shift-M opens up this dialog called Fit Measures. And I'm going to tell it lock the layout with that I selected with 6. You click OK, and then it forces it to show that many measures. So this is really important for scoring. And in both these finale assignments, I want you to make it look exactly like the example, just for practice. Eventually, you'll have to make your own decisions about how you want to fit your music so people can read it the best. But for now, just follow the format and try to do it exactly how they do it, just so you can get used to working with the tools. You can alternately, if you have just a real quick fix, you're like, oh no, I just need one more measure up there. You can select a measure and push up or down arrow. We'll push it between systems. So I need to go up one system or down one system. Finale organizes things into systems. So see this like groupings here, they call it a system where the line breaks are in a score. All right, so a little bit, we don't have too many expressions in this one or articulations, but there's a couple. And we've got fermatas in this. So this is done with the articulation tool, which is a tool that looks like a whole note with an accent. And articulations can be done by you just double click over. Do you see how this, it's kind of subtle. Do you see how my little arrow thing changes from just an arrow, if I zoom in a little bit more, to I get really close and it puts a little, that doesn't really change the size, does it? It puts a little note by it. Boom, do you see that? Everyone see that? It has a little tiny note. Once it's like, okay, so you mean that one. And you're like, yes. So if you want to be exact with this and not have it get confused, just look for that little arrow. Okay, it's queued up. Then you double click or click and you go and find the fermata. There it is. You can see that it has a little letter F by it. Some of the articulations have like smart shortcuts. So if I can push select and it'll put it there. And I can, if you drag an articulation, it'll put it below or above. I'm just going to delete those. Or you can just hold letter F down and click. That's my preferred way because it's faster and you don't have to go looking for it. So F is for fermata. Ooh, so smart. Later, S is for staccato. A is for accent. Things like that. So there's smart shortcuts. So hold down F and click over the note for fermata. All right, this is a big one. That's an important thing. I'm going to just fix up some of these measures. We've got this challenge here in the end. Actually, maybe I should work with, no, don't do that. I'm going to open up my file that I did already. Perfect. And it's got, all right. So you'll notice the last measure in this example has only 3 beats, even though the time signature is in 4/4. And that accounts for this pickup measure in the beginning, right? You'll know how pickup measures work. They got to make up the time somewhere. So to adjust it, we've got to basically kind of trick finale into showing only 3 beats, but not have like, you don't need to like confuse anyone by showing a different time signature. So we're going to work with the time signature tool. It's this one that's got a 4/4 up here. And we're going to click in that measure. And we're going to just leave it at 4/4 because we don't want it to change technically, but we're going to click more options. And we're going to click use a different time signature for display. So we're going to have it display 4/4, but we're going to technically change the number of beats to 3. Does that make sense? So it's going to be like, okay, you only want 3 beats, but don't change the time signature. We're going to keep displaying that 4/4. Or in the case of, I think I did the one I did a minute ago, common time, but they're the same thing. Always click the range here, measure 10 through 10, click OK. And that's how you have it render only showing 3 beats, but not technically changing the time signature display. That's a very useful thing to know how to do once you do more complicated pieces and stuff and you want to do funny things with rhythm. Question?
How did you get the time signature from the
Double click in the measure. Or I think if you're on a tool, whoops, you can click once in the measure and click return. That's another way you can do it. Return, yeah.
Enter and everything else.
Yeah, max you return, PCs you enter. Max you command, PCs you control. All right, a little bit about page margins and system margins. Very important aspect of being an arranger and scoring, because people need to be able to read very clearly what you wrote. A conductor needs to be able to read the score. And if you have things all on top of each other or too close together, it's unreadable. Also, if you have, only one staff and then tons of space, it's like, whoa, this is like end up being 40-page score. It could have been like 10. So how to maximize all of that? There's this tool called page layout. And there's 2 different options. Once you click on it, you go up to page layout. There's system margins and page margins. Let's do the page margins first because it's easier. I set everything at 0.5 for my manuscripts. You see how it gave me just a little bit more space on the left. I think this is the best way. Everything I've ever sent to printers totally works. Perfect amount. So page margins at 0.5 gives you enough space for everything. Then system margins. So this is the space between systems. And do you see how there's a numbering 1 and 2? Eventually you'll have, 1 through 100 when you make a big, huge score. All the systems are labeled. System 1 has special properties because it's the very first one, right? System 1 has all this space on top, has a little bit bigger margin on the left. So system 1 through 1, and finale kind of sets that up. That's pretty much what 1.5 on the top, 1.4 on the bottom, 0.5 on the left. That one's set. So system 2 through 2, I do something like 0.4, 0.4 is a starting place for a lot of scores. Something like that. Depends if you have, what kind of range you're working with. Then you can fine tune this with a tool called the staff tool that allows you, there's a little box on the top right, right by the clef. So it's not the bracket, but it's this little box. And you see how it highlighted my system? This allows you to actually later on, when you have more, this is more important, but you can drag if you need just like, oh, I just need a little space there. You can drag that. Always do this second because you want to make sure you have a good amount of space just in general, and then fine tune with the staff tool. If you double click the staff, it selects everything. So if you want everything to have space, or like if I want everything in the bass clef to have a little more space, you can do that. If you single click, it only does one system. See that? So that's the fine tuning with the staff tool. All right, so to play back, once you enter all these beautiful notes, you can push play. Oh, bum deal. I forgot to do play sound through on Zoom. Can I do it now though? I can stop the share. Hold on. Hold on. No, wait. Okay, screen share. This button, share sound. Okay. Will it work now? Go away, zoomy thing. Okay. Electron scalar D. Sound. Oh, it's set to zoom. Okay. Now will you work? People on Zoom are hearing it that have speakers. Let's try electron scalar D. Okay, Elizabeth can attest that I did this all in the beginning, right? And you were hearing it like 100 times. And now it's not doing it. Okay, I'm going to fix it, but I can't fix it now. But hopefully in the Zoom video, I think it's going to play through. If you don't see this playback control, you can go to Window, Playback Controls, and it'll show up. You just click it on in the Tools palette. But this is how you play stuff. And hopefully it's just because I have a Zoom meeting on that it's not playing through. All right, there's one final MIDI application that for this project is we're going to, rather than if you heard it, I'm going to fix this and I'll play you my example after I let you go at it. But we're going to assign different instruments to these layers. Rather than just having it play as a piano, what's cool about MIDI is you can assign different stuff. Once you've entered all this data in this way, in these layers, then you can go do different stuff with it. It's really cool. So if we go to Windows Score Manager, you'll see we've got our piano, and there's this little tiny arrow that changes direction right next to my name of my staff. And then if I click at the arrow next to staff 1, you'll see here's where my layers are. And here's where you can assign different instruments. So layer 1, I've got this device. Garriton Instruments is basically the sampler set of sounds that goes with Finale. I want you to come up with some kind of ensemble that's logical, that to plug in different instruments. I'm just going to do I'll just do a string quartet just to make this fast. So I'm going to do layer 1 is a violin and plugged in violin. Layer 2, I'm going to do violin 2. Then I'm going to go down to my staff 2. And remember, you'll enter layer 1 and 2 again for your tenor and bass. Don't do layer 3 and 4 because they don't have the same properties. 3 and 4 for like writing for guitar. You know, guitar sometimes has like, there's 2 layers, but then there's like these funky other notes that you can do with your fingers in the middle that can go up or down. That's what layers 3 and 4 are for. So layer 1 the tenor part, let's do viola. And layer 2, we're going to do in the bass clef. We're going to do, let's do double bass. Yes. All right. So this is what I want you to do. Assign new sounds. Once you get all this stuff entered, you'll assign a new ensemble, a quartet, and then that'll be your finished audio for the project. Always listen to your assignment before you submit, not only when you are in finale, but after you export it, make sure it worked. This is just a good professional advice when you go and do your first project with people. And you finally give them the drive link and they write you back 5 minutes later and they're like, it was silent. You're like, I forgot to check that it worked. So always, as you're going, always double check, always listen to it, make sure it's right. Make sure there's not like some crazy, weird, wrong note, right? You always want your music to represent you well. All right, so you'll submit this as a PDF, and Mac is a little funny with PDFs. You actually have to go and act like you're going to print. And, oh, beach ball of death, almost. And you go to save as PDF. Yeah, save as PDF. And that's how you do it. You're gonna just pretend like you're going to print. The audio is a little easier. You can just export under File, Export, Audio File. You click on that and you tell it where you want it to save. You can say what file. For this class, an AIFF or WAV works fine. Or I think I said to do a WAV, so we should do a WAV. That's fine. WAV is universal. Click Save, and you'll notice it's going to run the time. Oh, it's very short because it's only like 30 seconds. It'll run the time of the piece, and then it's saved. All right, here's an assignment checklist for you to go through. And that's the basic gist of the first project. So let's go at it.
Maybe like 20 odd step, it was just the construction